What is up, guys? It's your boy DFS Jimmy back again for Fanshare Sports this week on the early week course preview. If you haven't already, make sure you get over to fansharesports.com. Check out their pro package they've got going, getting into football season. So make sure that you guys are signed up and ready to go. Use code Jimmy if you haven't already signed up. JIMMIE. Pretty simple. Helps out us. And by the way, before we get too much further, make sure you subscribe to the video. Hit the like button down below. Helps us out a lot. Congratulations to Patrick Cantlay. Getting it done at Memorial. 4 shots back. Finds his way into the winner's circle. We all knew it was coming. Memorial, so perfect course to suit him. Very similar to Augusta. Fared well at Augusta this year. Not surprising to see him come in and take the W at a course that sets up very similar and certainly plays to Cantlay's strengths, who's scrambling has come a really long way this season. So congratulations to him. Moving north of the border, we are going to the RBC Canadian Open with the schedule changes this year. The Canadian Open, normally falling after the Open Championship, is now before the Open Championship, which is the last major of the year. And normally, over the last few years, we've seen this event played at Glen Abbey Country Club, kind of the other side of Canada. Or just a different style of course, really, completely compared to what we are going to see this week at a course they haven't seen in a long time. They have played it before here on the PGA Tour 3 different times in recent history, but Hamilton Golf and Country Club, located in Hamilton and Castor, Ontario, actually. But just outside Toronto, set next to the Great Lakes. It is a very old school type of track, originally designed in 1914, par 70, less than 7,000 yards, bent grass greens. POA creeps in kind of everywhere, but predominantly bent grass here. And as I mentioned, very old school setup, very much an English type course, kind of a Parkland English style old course. You're going to have a lot of trees, a lot of dog legs. As you see in the hole behind me here, there's no trees that line this fairway, but there are in many of the holes throughout. And this course is kind of like what you see behind me. A lot of bunkering, and kind of lays everything out right there in front of you. What you see is what you get. And it is definitely a less than driver golf course, especially if we have dry conditions here this week. Already a short golf course. In all my research, again, this course hasn't been seen since 2012. They played it in 03, 06, and 2012. We will look at who fared well in those years and look at, the type of games that have had success around here. We'll also take a look at the scorecard for those 3 rounds that they do have records for, and see where guys struggled, see where guys scored, and get a full breakdown of the course. But before we get into that, just, I guess, kind of give my take on what I took away after all my research here for this track. Pretty brutal rough. A tight track for the most part. Dialing it back off of the tee is definitely the way to go if you're spraying your drives. You cannot play this golf course from the rough or out of position. The greens are very small here, and they have quite a bit of tilt, quite a bit of undulation. As you see behind me, there's one hole, there's quite a bit of elevation, and there's a lot of undulation for the designer to have played with in his design. It's been redesigned once, fairly modern, but compared to the 1914 original. Complete design. But overall, this is very much a position type of golf course. And I think the biggest overall takeaway is this is the type of course that any PGA Tour professional can find success on. Period. This is the type of course that levels the playing field from the modern game. You do not have to be long off the tee. You do not have to hit a high ball around here. What you do need to do is position yourself well throughout the golf course, throughout all 4 rounds. Minimize your mistakes because there's only 2 par 5s. There's not going to be a lot of places for guys to make up ground throughout this golf course. But because the greens are so small, and if you can find the fairway and you can put yourself in position into the green, you absolutely find a lot of makeable putts here. Being in the correct position in relation to the hole, I also think is incredibly important. Reading some player notes from back in 2012, finding yourself on the wrong side of the hole, given the severe undulation and sort of the sloping nature of this property, can really make for some difficult 2-putts. Not the kind of course that I think I want to be putting for par on frequently. I think it's the kind of course where you really just have to maximize your opportunities for birdie here. I know that sounds really simple, but what you're looking for this week is a neat and tidy game that is going to find fairways and is going to find greens and miss very, very few. And I would say if their players are going to be missing greens due to tight pins and things like that, I think it'll be crucial that players miss the green on the wrong side or the right side of the hole. Missing the green on the wrong side could really spell disaster with some of the undulation I've seen around here, and giving yourself the wrong look to make an up and down. You could easily see yourself going from an up and down for par to a double bogey around this track. So that said, there have been some pretty good winning scores, 17 under, 14 under the last 2 times it was played. So, there are birdies out there to be had. This isn't the kind of thing I think we see dip into the 20s, but I do think that there will be some scoring throughout. And definitely a course that while birdies are important, avoiding bogey is going to be crucial. And that's going to come through, just strategic management of the golf course. You're really not going to be able to overpower a course like this. I do think there's some places that guys are going to take some chances and do need to take some chances if they want to move up the leaderboard. But just understand, taking those chances at the wrong time or not executing can absolutely take you out of a hole, or could really take you out of a tournament. There's a couple of opportunities for some big numbers out there. I think if guys are not positioning themselves well off of the tee. So, it is a short golf course, so I don't think players really need to take the additional chances, by pulling the big stick if they don't have to. Knock down 3-iron, hybrids, 5 woods, things like that. All you need to be in play around a track like this, especially if it's dry. The 2012 edition saw quite a bit of moisture here. Pretty soft golf course, did lead to that 17 under. Scott Piercy, the eventual winner. Chris Kirk and Will McGirt found themselves in the top 5, top 10. 2014, Jim Furyk won. So if that tells you anything about the type of game you need to be successful around here, Jim Furyk, obviously a master of, just giving himself a lot of opportunities with great long iron play, and he's never going to miss a fairway. So, that's the type of game we're probably looking for around here. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into the scorecard here. Like I said, sub 7,000 yard par 70. You will note that both par 5s very likely reachable for the field. Nothing too crazy in this. I do want to draw the attention to the 8 par 4s between 400 and 450 yards. That is the meat of this golf course. That, if you're looking for a whole range to find success, that is absolutely where you need to be looking. Overweight your models, whatever you want to do. That is where you need to be looking for success around here. It is going to account for almost 40% of all the DraftKings points. And there's only two holes in the par 4 range, shorter and longer. So really a lot of this golf course, nearly half of it is tied up in that 400 to 450 yard par 4 grinded out type of golf course. So consistency is going to be key this week for players to navigate, just this kind of mundane stretch of all the same type of hole, same yardages. So finding a guy that's performing well or going to perform well this week in this range is going to be important for success. The other thing to note is 3 of the par 3s rather, are over 200 yards, and a couple of them significantly so. Long iron ball striking is going to be crucial here, and I think that's going to echo again when we see who's found success at this track, because again, you do not have to be a long hitter, and some of the best long iron ball strikers in the game are not long hitters. They're course managers, and I think that's the type of game we're going to be looking for to succeed around this track at Hamilton this week. So a lot of big names in the field this week, a lot of bigger names than we're used to seeing. Players that are probably not used to playing a track like this. It's entirely possible that we see a Brooks or a DJ come out and kind of dominate here. But really it's more of a plotters and positioners type of course, in my opinion. Not that those guys can't do that, but it certainly takes away their most deadly weapon off of the tee. So again, like I said earlier, I really think this course is the type of course that any one of these professionals that finds themselves consistent for a week can put together a really strong performance. So that's the scorecard. Again, nothing too crazy. The last hole, the 446 yard par 4 is a brute. It averages a full quarter stroke of a par, as does the 6th hole, the par 3. Really tough track, or really tough hole. The 481 yard par 4 11th, also another hole that is going to see some guys squealing a bit. And you notice the rest of the track, you got your birdies on your par 5s, obviously, and then everything else is this middle range of these 400 to 450 yard par 4s. And they're kind of up for grabs. If your game is on, you're going to find some birdies there. If it's not, you're just going to struggle to grind out par all week long. kind of the way it is. So we're looking for the guys that really excel in this range. The 400 to 450 yard par fours. Your approach distances are going to be between 150 and 175 this week. And really with you factor in the par threes, maybe a few more longer iron shots, to find success. But not much water on this track. Quite a few bunkers though. A lot of old school type bunkering, very Donald Ross-esque in sort of the design of Hamilton here this week. So moving on, let's look at the course history, and I'll sort first by the actual average course history and the 3 events that have been played in modern history. And of course, there's only like 3 or 4 golfers in the field that have played this all 3 years, given how old this track is or how old some of these records are. And I'm not really sure any of this is relevant for course history as we think of it today. What I hope to do with this exercise is just kind of point out some guys that have found success, and then show you what my model thinks based on hole length, based on I actually mixed in some good drive percentage this week because I feel like that's going to be important. Just a tee to green game and giving yourself opportunities at those short putts. So Scott Piercy was the eventual winner in 2012. Josh Teeter, Bud Collins, Scott Stallings, interesting choice this week. I think he has an opportunity to go well. Not sure how his current form is off the top of my head, but Brian Harman, this is a track where you think a guy like Brian Harman could play well, nice and tidy. You do need to work the ball both ways based on, kind of what I see in this track and avoiding the rough. Brian Harman, kind of fits that mold, tidy off the tee, good long irons when his game is on, and, can sink a few putts. JB Holmes, not the prototypical type of game that you would think would succeed around a really tight, short golf course, but went on very good long iron ball striker, and we know he can put a few hot rounds together. Guys that do kind of ring the bell here that you do think this course fits: Brandt Snedeker, Matt Kuchar finishing 34th here in 2012. Obviously, Matt Kuchar ranking well in my model, but guys that you do think would play well around here. Never going to miss a fairway, always going to be consistent in the greens, not the best putters, not the worst putters, but are going to have an opportunity to make enough putts drop around a track like this. 2006, I think it was Jim Furyk was the winner. Yeah, Jim Furyk, Jonathan Burden. You see the list dwindling as we go back. There's only like 12 guys that played this in 2006 that are still in the field today. Bubba Watson, oddly enough, T14 here in 2006. Not the kind of track you think, very much like JB Holmes, that Bubba would play well on. But that said, this is a track you do have to work the ball both directions. You do need to find some creativity around some of these dog legs and into some of these really tight pins and these greens over some sharp bunker carries. Bubba does kind of have that. So he's got that imagination, that creativity aspect to his game that, could play well here, but certainly the distance is not going to be as big a boon as you think it would. David Hearn, home game for David Hearn, by the way. He lives just around the corner. So as close to a home game as he's ever going to get. Has one good performance, and then, 2 others fairly lackluster. Interesting to note, just 2003, Mike Weir and KJ Choi. Mike Weir, the the famous Canadian golfer. Good for him, putting up a T10 back in 2003. KJ Choi, this is exactly the type of golfer that I kind of want to highlight here. KJ Choi is exactly the type of player that you would think would find success at a track like this. Don't need to be long, incredibly consistent with his irons, incredibly consistent off of the tee despite the lack of length, and going to just maximize his opportunities for some short birdie putts. And over the course of 4 days is going to find a lot of those to drop. You can avoid the bogeys, avoid the big numbers, and just make a few birdies throughout each round. And you're going to find yourself in the mix on Sunday. KJ Choi, very much that type of golfer. So when you just sort by course history here, most people have not played this course on tour, so there's not really much to work off of. But what I do want to highlight is, some of the guys that have found success here with any sort of consistency, long iron ball strikers. But again, the other thing I want to highlight with this list is it's a mixed bag, right? It's just sort of any type of PGA professional. These guys all are very good at what they do. They can all find success on a track like this, where if your game shows up, there's no reason that any of these guys can't find themselves, kind of in contention on a weekend, hanging around the mid part of a leaderboard, and one solid round puts them right up there. So that's the interesting thing about a golf course like this, is it really does sort of open up our player pool. You don't really have to tailor it, in my opinion. Any one of these top tier golfers can find success at a track like this. Um, let's sort by the model, and like I said, the model this week I mixed in because we have very little course history to work with. I did mix in, so most of it's by hole length. I did mix in a little bit of good drive percentage, and then I did bump up the percentage for the comparable courses. So I really wanted to focus on golfers that have performed well on, tough driving courses, short driving courses, less than driver courses, tight fairways. Medium tier scoring environment, and yeah, you sort of like your classic design courses. And when you do that, you get this list of golfers in the model that, while I agree with some, there's some that kind of make me scratch my head, but you'll notice an absence of some of the big bomber names because the model inherently kind of took that away with adding in a little bit of good drive percentage as well as, that sort of course tailored type that I wanted to look for. But no surprise, Jim Furyk, former winner here. Prototypical game for a course like this, nice and tidy off of the tee, very great, very good long iron game, and is going to find a few putts to drop. Webb Simpson, very same thing. Webb Simpson, theoretically should have a really, really good opportunity to find success at a track like this. Already talked about Matt Kuchar, Russell Knox, same thing. All of these top few guys. Daniel Berger definitely comes into the model. I'm not sure how his health actually is. Had some mixed bag results lately, but Daniel Berger seems like the type of track he could excel on. Does not have to pound it off of the tee. Can focus on that par 4 long iron scoring game that he's kind of worked himself a niche in. Sergio Garcia, same thing. Great ball striker throughout. You would think this track would suit him nicely. Justin Thomas is an interesting choice to me, given that he's coming off his wrist injury, but also this track certainly takes away that huge power that he displays off the tee in that tiny package. Sungjae Im, interesting track for a guy like Sungjae. Sanjay's really played well in some of the really tougher scoring environments this year throughout. Interesting to see how he can go this week. Scott Piercy, ranked number 12 in my model, former winner here. Again, long iron ball striking. It's kind of where it's at. Rory Keegan, they fit in there for the same reason. That approach distance, that long iron ball striking on those medium length par 4s really comes into play. I can't stress enough that you got to find the fairway on this track. You really cannot play this course out of the rough. These greens are so small, you're not going to be able to hold them if you're coming out of the rough and keep your position where you need to be to give yourself makeable putt opportunities. So finding the fairway is crucial, and that's really what we're looking for this week, is getting yourself in the fairway, getting yourself positioned, and moving forward. Similar to Colonial, similar to RBC Heritage in some ways. It's not the kind of track you're going to be able to overpower. It's not the kind of track you're going to be able to bomb it around, with the exception of a few holes that guys can take advantage of. If you see some of your bigger hitters hitting 6 drivers, that might be the max number you're going to see in terms of big hitters hitting drivers around here is 6 holes, maybe. And that's probably aggressive. It's probably closer to like 4, 5 holes that you're really going to feel comfortable taking driver. And a lot of that's just going to depend on the guy and his eye and how he feels about his game at that time. But you're going to see a lot of people clubbing down off of the tee. The Gary Woodland stinger and Tiger Woods stinger coming to mind here. Perfect type of ball flight and track to be able to have this nice controlled position game that really I think this course is going to require. So a lot of questions up in the air. One of the things that I do think will dictate how this course plays and the type of setup is going to be the weather. Looks like in 2012 they had quite a bit of soft conditions out there, and that allowed maybe a little bit more favorable scoring environment. This year they've kind of had a regular, looks like based on Weather Underground, just a regular amount of precipitation in the area, nothing too crazy. Does look like a Tuesday has an opportunity to dump some rain on the track and soften it up a little bit, but then by the time we get to the weekend, looking at some pretty high winds coming off of the lakes there possibly that could really wreak havoc on the weekend scoring environment to make this a truly, a true test for some of these guys, depending on how the course is set up, how it's running. I expect it to be a bit soft to start, firm up over the weekend, and toughen up as the conditions change and as the course dries out. So I think you might see a few more drivers earlier in the week, and you'll see guys clubbing down a lot more and taking a lot more consideration off of the tee as we move into the weekend, especially if the wind picks up like it's projected to over the weekend. So a lot of question marks with a new course like this, especially a course that's vastly different from what we're used to at Glen Abbey, rendering course history almost useless, as well as the reschedule makes it so that there's almost it's almost a coin flip with regard to what data is usable and what's not. So I hope you guys have a great week. I hope everybody finds some green screens. Best of luck to everyone. Your boy DFS Jimmy signing out. We'll see you guys next week.